I hear it all the time. There's this battle, this debate, this back and forth between Evergreen launching. And it's like some people are team Evergreen, some people are team launching. And people are talking smack on the other one. There's this problem with this one, and this is why this model is better, and blah, 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 blah. Well, I'm putting an end to that today. This episode is not long. It's maybe 20 minutes, maybe a little bit less. But in that time frame, I break down what you should really be doing based off the experience that we've had over the last year or two when we were launching and using Evergreen at the same time. And we've done Evergreen in the form of automated webinars, as well as sales calls and high ticket sales and all that stuff. And we've done launches, small launches, all the way up to launches that have done $1.5 million in sales. And so we have the experience in all of them. We've gotten all the different models to work inside of our business. We've gotten each model to produce over $1 million a year each. And so we've learned a lot of things. And that's what this episode is here to do, is to break down what we've learned and what I would advise based on our experience. So if that's interesting to you, well, keep on listening.
Hi, I'm Brandon Lucero, and you're about to experience the new way to thrive in business, entrepreneurship, and life by leaning into who you are, what you love, and standing up for what you want to create. Get ready, because this is where we go against the grain, say no to outdated society norms, and we say yes to change in order to create a happier, more fulfilled world. Welcome to the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. Today we're going to talk about, what are we going to talk about today? Evergreen versus launching? We're going to talk about and continue the series of the five major marketing mistakes that people make. And this one might be a little controversial because I know it's a pretty big topic. At least that's what it feels like, and it seemed like it's been a big topic for a lot of years, and people always thinking they have the right way, best way, whatever. And so, there's this big debate on, should you go evergreen? Should you do launching? And then you have the people who do launching really well, like making a case for launching and saying that evergreen is terrible because of X, Y, and Z. And you have all the people who have done evergreen making a big case for launching. And so, you hear a lot of people in the evergreen camp that are talking about how stressful launches are, and you put all your eggs in one basket, and like it's the only business model in the industry that works like this. And it's like, who cares? It works, So my thought is on that is, if you think launches are stressful and overwhelming and a lot of work, I mean, they are, but also is running a business is a lot of work. And if you think that evergreen is not a lot of work, well, then you got something else coming, because that also is a lot of work to get set up and to get running and things like that. But launches, after you dial them in, they're not really that stressful. Like, I think the most stressful part about it is the amount of sales you're going to get, which is always unpredictable. And that is a problem. However, when you have launching down, it shouldn't be stressful. It shouldn't be this overwhelming amount of work. Like, yeah, you're going to have like things going on and trainings and card open and this and that. It might be a little bit more work than you're normally used to. But if you feel like you're just like killing yourself for months on end, you're not launching right. And so, there are people that say that. And my response to that is, well, you haven't mastered launching. But on the flip side of that, you have a lot of people that are about launching and talking about how much revenue you can make and this and that and how great the model is. And again, it is a great model. You get a big burst of income, and then you have recurring from payment plans. And I like that business model. I think it's great. So you have a lot of people talking about that, and they talk about evergreen and how evergreen is hard and doesn't have the energy that a launch does, not the big burst in sales and all of this stuff. And so, and they're right on that. So there's a lot of pros and cons to both, I guess, is what I'm saying. And I do think that when you master each one of them, they really shouldn't be that much work. Like, yeah, it's going to take work because it's a business, but it shouldn't be this overwhelming work. It's the mastering of each one of those that becomes the work. And so with Evergreen, a lot of the great things is it does follow a lot of the more traditional business models. It becomes a lot more measurable and KPI driven and predictable. Not everything is predictable, but it's more or less predictable. You have consistency. You can sometimes have launch size revenue month to month, but I haven't seen that personally. Like I have not seen, like some of our launches will do $1 million to $1.5 million. I have not done a month on Evergreen where we've done $1 million to $1.5 million. So again, I feel like if you're hitting launch size revenue every month on Evergreen, it's because you haven't actually figured out how to launch. And so, and again, there's nothing really wrong with that. And there's nothing wrong with either one of the models is my whole point. My whole point is that there's nothing wrong with either one. All of them work. And this is my sort of my pet peeve, I guess, when it comes to people preaching their method and their strategy and their platform is that all of them work, man. Like webinars work, video series works, Evergreen works, automated sales, sales calls work, launching works, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, they all work. I can find people that are successful with every single platform, every single strategy doing really well. And so it's not about the strategy. It's not about finding the best thing. It's about finding the best thing for you. It's about finding the best method or process that you like. Maybe you don't want to master launches, and there's nothing wrong with that. Then go Evergreen, right? But the thing I wanted to talk about with Evergreen versus launching is some of the pros and the cons and some of the things that we've discovered. And I actually am kind of on a camp where I'm not choosing Evergreen or launching. I'm actually choosing both. And I think you're leaving a lot of money on the table if you're not doing both. And here's what I mean by this is that a launch has a lot of really great things going for it. You can create a lot of hype. You can create a lot of demand. There's a lot of scarcity. And the energy, if you do a launch right, is unmatched. You will never be able to match the energy of a launch, the momentum of a launch on Evergreen. You just won't. Because you have, depending how big your launch list is, but hundreds, if not thousands and thousands of people all looking forward to something. You're creating demand for the teachings. They want to show up. They're engaging. If you do it right inside the Facebook group, there's engagement inside the Facebook group and everyone's just freaking excited. And that momentum is hard to recreate. You can't recreate that on Evergreen. I've never seen anyone successfully do that. But again, with Evergreen, what we've also realized, if you do it right, is that Evergreen also speeds up the no's. And that doesn't happen in launches. And here's what I mean by this. One of the biggest discoveries we made when we started playing around with Evergreen and automated sales and high ticket automation of sales is that it takes people, a lot of people will think in order to drive a sale, you need to build the know, like, and trust and all this stuff. And you do, you do need to do that. But what we started to notice, because we were doing weekly webinars, I just said, let's do a webinar every week pitching the same thing and let's just see what happens. And we'll keep inviting people back. And I started to realize that after about 2 or 3 weeks, 3 or 4 weeks, 5 or 6 weeks, sometimes we'd have the same people show up again and again and again and again. And I'm like, why would someone continue to show up to the same teachings week after week after week and not buy? And then eventually they did buy. And what I realized was going on, and I always thought that it was like you needed multiple launches before someone finally says yes. And that's not really what it is. What it is you need multiple times where the person knows they have the problem or a problem and they know you can solve it and they say no to your solution 2 or 3 times before they finally say yes. So it's not necessarily that people need to go through 2 or 3 launches before they buy. They need to have a problem. You need to just demonstrate you understand that problem. They need to know you have the solution and they need to say no 2 or 3 times before they finally say yes. And so what happened was when we started to do Evergreen and we would do what I call recycling, which is you recycle the leads back into the funnel or back into the trainings to see the offer again. Instead of, if you only launch 2 times a year, sometimes it would take you a year and a half for someone to say no 2 or 3 times. But because we were doing a weekly webinar and sometimes we would do them bi-weekly, sometimes we even do monthly. But even if you did it monthly, you speed up that process from a year and a half to 3 months. And so what we started to realize is that, okay, when we do these sales calls, everyone's saying, I saw one of your workshops. I saw one of your workshops. I saw one of your workshops. And those were the people that were buying. So I just said, well, let's do a workshop every week then. And let's see what happens. And we kept inviting the same people back. And what do you know? People started to buy. after coming 2 or 3 times. And so the light bulb went on. And the way I look at launches now, it used to be our main source of revenue, our launches. And they still are a very big part of our revenue. However, what I started to realize was that a lot of when we set up Evergreen and we were doing high ticket automated sales in Evergreen, what I started to realize was that a lot of people who were actually buying on Evergreen were people that were part of our launches. So they went through a major part of being a part of the energy of knowing they have the problem and saying no. And then instead of waiting a year or 6 months to pitch them again, we would put out ads or pieces of content that would bring them back into an automated back-end funnel that no one really knew we were running except for our internal team. And then they would see a training or a presentation and they would book a call and our team would get on a sales call with them and we would pitch and they would buy. But I know that we wouldn't have gotten as many sales. And I don't know the actual numbers, but I'm guessing we probably did around $1 million in revenue last year on our Evergreen process. Maybe more, I'm not sure, but somewhere in that range. But what I started to realize was a lot of what that $1 million was made up of was people, not all of it, but a decent portion of it was people who attended one of our launches and didn't buy. And so what I started to realize is like, wow, if we hadn't had that launch and we were doing this Evergreen thing, I don't know if our Evergreen would have done as well as it did had we not had the launch. And so sometimes I see these people that are arguing back and forth, launch and Evergreen, launch and this, and let me talk smack about launches and let me talk smack about Evergreen. It's like both of you guys are missing the freaking boat, man. Both of you are not maximizing and optimizing as much as you can, in my opinion, based off of what we've been saying. And that also means like in Evergreen, I think sometimes people think that Evergreen is like totally hands off and Evergreen is not hands off. What Evergreen means to me is that it's just an automated process that's always running. It's not like a launch and a stop and a go. And so what we started to do is something that we called the mini launches. And we'll probably create a product on this down the road. But we would do, that's exactly what it was, a mini launch. And so what we would have is these automated processes, maybe it was an Evergreen webinar to sell a product, a small product, or maybe it was like they opt in and then we have a setter call them the leads and then have them book a call and get them on a sales call. And so that was working fine. But all these people that were opting in for our free stuff were getting called for and trying to get them to book a sales call, and people that are coming to our webinars for our low end ticket products. What we ended up started doing is inviting all of them to biweekly and monthly workshops. It's just a 2-day workshop. And so again, we were doing webinars in the beginning and now we decided we have this automated sales process running. Let's try to, the people that go through it and say no, let's invite them to a free 2-day workshop and see what happens. And it's just like a mini launch is what we said. Let's just do a mini launch. So we would invite them, give them a couple reminder emails. They would show up for the 2 days, and then I would pitch a book a call at the end of the 2 days, and we would be getting anywhere from like 5 to 15% of them to book a call, sometimes more. Actually, a lot of the times it was even closer, sometimes even closer to 20 to 25% to book a call. And then most of our sales on a monthly basis were coming from the mini launches. And what we had done is we just adapted a launch style model into the Evergreen process, the automated sales process, and it worked like gangbusters. But that happens because you get out of the ego and out of this whole like, let me just talk smack about the opposite business model and let me see if there's a way to work these together. And so a lot of this also depends on, do you have a small product, a big product? You mean like low ticket, high ticket? Do you have, what are you more comfortable with? What can your nervous system handle? Because sometimes big launches are stressful as far as like, am I going to make my money back? Stressful. There's a lot of pros and cons to both, and you just have to sort of figure out which one you like the best. And so, with Evergreen, there's also automated webinars and Evergreen webinars, and then you can do whatever you want to follow up with those leads and things like that. But I do think that if you are on Evergreen and you're not launching, you're missing the biggest opportunity you have to close a lot of sales, which is launch, make money, even if you break even. So, for example, in our last launch, we had roughly 10,000 people opt in for it. We had, I don't know, maybe 200 people buy or 300 people buy or whatever it was. It must have been 300 something people buy, I think, somewhere in that range, which means we have 9,700 people who registered but didn't buy. Now I can take all those people and start running my Evergreen content and ads to them, get them through the Evergreen process, and I can wait a month, 2 months, 3 months. But these are going to be the most warmed up people that you can ever bring in, and happen because you launched. And if you even if you break even on your launch, but you look at it through the lens of, I just broke even on this thing and I am left with 9,700 leads. Guess what? You just got 9,700 leads for free that are now warmed up that you can invite back via email or even remarketing ads to get them to go through your Evergreen funnels for your other products. Maybe they're lower ticket or even higher ticket, right? And also vice versa. You're going to end a launch and you have 9,700 people who didn't buy. And what, you're going to wait a year or 6 months to get them to buy something else? No. That's what Evergreen can do. Evergreen can help you, even if it's not the same offer. It could be a lower ticket or a higher ticket. For us, we like to go higher ticket, but it could be lower ticket. And you have this giant list of people that you can continue to market to that didn't buy. Instead of waiting, forcing them to wait 6 months, you can get them now. And so again, they go hand in hand. The way I like to describe it's also the same way that I describe organic traffic versus paid traffic. The way I like to describe it is your business is a bicycle, and you're going to go a lot faster when both tires are filled up. And a lot of people are walking around with one tire filled up, and what they're doing is they're then talking smack on the tire that's flat. And it's like, well, you're the one who's on a bicycle that's going slower. So maybe we need to get both tires filled up. And again, it can look any way you guys want it to go. And again, if you're just absolutely forbid to go eat one way or the other, then so be it. Like, that's your choice. And honestly, I feel like if you listen to this episode and you're like, well, I got to do what Brandon says and launch. And even though I don't want to, it's like, that's not what I'm saying, guys. Like, find out what works for you. And if you're okay with doing both, I think that is the maximum ultimate way to go, and make more sales throughout the entire year. And, it's also nice sometimes when you have a launch that doesn't go the right way and like, well, our Evergreen process will pick up the slack. And that's happened to us before, right? And it's like the launch didn't really hit what we wanted it to hit, but at least we can go right back into our Evergreen process and we know that works. And so again, they go hand in hand. So this whole battle of like Evergreen versus launching, I think you should be using both. And in fact, you can actually be using tactics from each model inside of each model. And like I mentioned with our Evergreen process, we started doing mini launches inside of the Evergreen process. Like, we just threw it in and let's see what happens to the leads. And it started to work really well, right? But then we also did the same thing inside of our launches. So it was like, in our Evergreen process, we have a setter, someone who calls every single lead that comes in and sets them onto a call, a sales call, right? And that is what our Evergreen process sort of looked like. Well, we started doing the same thing in our launches. It's like when leads would come in or people showed it, they were interested in Facebook and different things like that. We actually had a whole team of people that would reach out, that would DM them, talk to them, get them on a sales call, even sometimes before our training even started, or would follow up with them or establish a connection with them. And so we would have thousands of people that are having conversations with our team. And then it would eventually get set onto a sales call because we adapted what we were doing in the Evergreen process. And so you can learn from both. You can use both and interweave them together to create a really, really powerful business model. So the lesson I want to leave you with, the big marketing mistake, I think, is automatically saying no to one model versus the other when both play nicely. They play nicely together, and parts of them can actually go together as well. And you just have to find a process and a model that works really well for you. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode, and left you with a couple ahas on how you can improve your business model. Pay attention to next week because we're going to be going into another episode of one of the 5 major marketing mistakes that people make. So see you all next week. Take care.
Hey guys, thank you so much for checking out another episode of the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, go below, hit the subscribe button, and make sure you click on that bell icon and get notified every time we drop a new episode. Now, if you're looking for the show notes, we have them linked underneath this video, as well as our social media handles and some links to free training and offers that we drop from time to time to help you guys even further. So go check those out if you're interested, and thank you so much for tuning in to the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast.